Hello and welcome back. Now, the Minnesota Wild had a crazy week. It started off with a 10-7 win against the conference best Canucks, including hat tricks from Kaprizov and Eriksson Ek, and then Kaprizov just went beast mode from there. 6 goals, 6 assists, 12 points, 6 power play points in just 4 games. That's absolutely nuts. And then his line mates also went ballistic. So Zuccarello, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points, 7 power play points, and then Eriksson Ek, 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, 4 of those on the power play. So I hope you weren't facing somebody who stacked Minnesota Wild players last week, because you probably lost just because of that. This week, however, the schedule returns somewhat normal, so let's dive in and take a look. Now, 52 games this week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday are the light nights. Though there are 6 games on Sunday, which will be nice if you're trailing in your matchup. You can pick up somebody on Sunday. Also, a bunch of Saturday, Sunday back-to-backs for you as well. Now, the least games this week, the Rangers, the Blackhawks, and the Calgary Flames, who are actually playing really well and just beat Edmonton last night. And then all these teams have 4 games, but I've sort of ranked them in order of how many light nights they play. So we'll start off with the Caps. Monday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. Couple winnable games in there. Couple difficult games with Detroit playing well, Philly playing well. Then you have Ottawa with a Monday, Tuesday back-to-back and a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. So if you wanted to grab a Senator, you could drop them on Sunday morning and pick somebody up and get 5 games out of that week and hold them for the back-to-backs. Also, we'll talk about their goaltending because they'll have to use both goalies at least twice this week. Then you have Edmonton. There's not a whole lot on the waiver wire. We're not going to dive into potential pickups. I know people are thinking about Warren Fogle. I just don't trust him. I don't think there's enough of a track record there. And if he loses that line assignment, he's useless to you. And then we're going to look at L.A. and Dallas. So without further ado, let's get into the best schedule this week and some guys you can add from the Washington Capitals. Now, worth noting that Alex Ovechkin is back. 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points, 5 of those on the power play in the last 11 games for Ovechkin. So you're going to want exposure to him. Right now, the top line is Ovechkin, Connor McMichael, and Nicholas Aube-Kubel. So we have McMichael down here, 5 goals, 7 hits in his last 6 games. He's kind of had a little bit of a coming out party. Young players like this are streaky, so if this dries up, he's not going to be worth the time. But because of the fact that he's 1% owned, he's probably your best deep league value this week. But then we also have the usual suspects, the guys that you would probably want more often than not. TJ Oshie, only 15% owned. His ownership has been as high as the mid-50s this year when he was productive and healthy. That's the problem. He's not healthy right now. He's day-to-day. But if he gets back into the lineup, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points, 3 of those on the power play. He does a little bit of everything, shots, hits, and blocks. And when we pull up his hub, you can see a lot of that here. So really good shot blocking, 1.55 hits per game. Power play numbers are good. Shot volume is a little bit low, but the goals are pretty decent. They are 10 goals in 38 games. And he's been trending up basically since mid-December. So he's been consistently playing well. Basically, I think that was when he was coming back from injury. But he's always in and out of the lineup. That's the only negative with TJ Oshie. So if he's not available, you do have the option of Dylan Strome. He's got 7 points in a 4-game point streak right now. 3 of those on the power play, 27% owned. He is a center, so that's a little bit less valuable. But if you look at his hub, he's only got 3% hitting, which means that everything else is really good, and he would normally be a higher rating if he hit at all. So the shot volume, a little tiny bit low. We'd like to see 2.5 plus, 3 plus, but 2.18 is okay. Power play numbers are good. Goal numbers are good. 21 goals in 56 games on the year. And then the shot blocking, 0.75 blocks per game. And he's been trending up at least since early December. So he's one of the more consistent guys you can add from the Caps. But they do have that front back-to-back. And then these, Friday, Sunday. So that's nice light night coverage for you. So you get the Monday, the Friday, the Sunday, and then they do have that back-to-back. So they will have to use both goaltenders. So if you own Kemper or Lindgren, that should help you out as well. But up next, let's turn to another team that we need to look at, and that is the Ottawa Senators. And they do have some players that you can grab. There are a couple of guys that I always look to, and number 1 on that list is Josh Norris. Now, he goes hot and cold. He was cold for a while. I had to drop him from one of my teams, but he's back. I wouldn't say hot, but he's heating up, and he comes and goes in waves. He's a goal scorer, so he's a little bit streaky, but he's been one of those guys that you can turn to pretty much all the time for goal coverage and shot volume. That was his thing last year, shot volume. Trying to pull up his hub right now and show you guys. So I'll move this over and allow you to see it a little bit better. Josh Norris, 85% or 85th percentile in goals, shot volume at 2.4. He's been higher than that in the past. The power play production is really good. He's always on power play 1, and he is currently on power play 1. 4 points in his last 2 games. So he's, streaky, and he's on a hot streak right now heading into a 4-game week. That's why you would want to own him. 1.67 hits per game is nice, and you can see here the streakiness. Up, down, up, down, up, down. So he's right here, kind of where these lows are coming in. If you're looking at this like a stock analyst, this is where the bottom is. So he's probably going to bump back up over the next week, just looking at that trend. And you would want to grab him because he's only 21% owned. And he is currently playing line 3, 5-on-5, but he is always on power play 1. So that is nice to have. Now, another guy that we have to talk about is Shane Pinto, 17% owned. He's another single position center, so that's not ideal. But if you look at his shot volume, 93rd percentile in shot volume, 98th in shot blocks, 1.14 blocks per game, 1 hit per game or thereabouts. And he's got 10 points in 13 games this year, so he's relatively close to a point per game. He's been a little bit streaky. He was really slow to start, and then in the middle of that 13-game stretch, heated up and was one of the best players on the Senators, and then he's kind of got a little bit cold. But in a 4-game week, if there's not a lot on your waiver wire, both of these guys should be available. And then speaking of available, you also have Matthew Joseph, if you want to go there, 3% owned, single position right wing, but he is playing top line with Claude Giroux and Tim Stützle. So that is an interesting line assignment. He may lose that, but he's always been a relatively consistent player in terms of hitting, shot blocking. He's got 1.42 hits per game. Shot volume is a little bit low for me. He doesn't get power play time, so that is why he's 3% owned, I would imagine. And then 10 goals on the year in 45 games is not bad, but that's normally because he's a middle 6 guy. Now he's getting an opportunity in the top line, so ride that while you can. But that's going to be it for the Ottawa Senators owns. We will talk about their goaltending later. But right now, let's move it on to another team with a 4-game week, and that is the L.A. Kings. And there's a couple usual suspects that I always talk about for L.A. You're looking at Trevor Moore. You're looking at Danault. Neither of them have done anything particularly helpful in the last couple weeks. Trevor Moore is relatively cold. Danault, a couple assists over the last number of games, but nothing crazy there. But one guy that we do have to talk about is Brandt Clarke. He's lighting up the AHL this year. He was lighting up juniors last year. Absolutely crazy pace in the playoffs. I think he was about 2 points per game in the OHL playoffs last year. And now he's up with the big squad. He's potentially quarterbacking power play 2 if they continue that line assignment. He's got 4 points in his last 6 games, 12 shots, 2 power play points, and he's gone from a 16 to a 70. Obviously, it's a small sample size, but that is a huge jump, and it's all positive direction. He was in and out of the lineup, not getting a lot of time. They did just recall Jordan Spence, so that might eat into his power play time. But when he's out there, really good shot volume, 2.33 shots per game, good power play production as well. And, not quarterbacking power play 1, but they are using 2 units, and they do spread out a little bit of their talent there, so you could go there. And just to show you Trevor Moore, you're getting elite shot volume, 3.21 shots per game. Goal production is nice, 21 goals on the year. And then, obviously, one of the other guys I go to all the time is Phil Danault. Almost a hit per game, 0.8 blocks per game, shot volume at around 2. Kind of average numbers this year. He has been trending downward over the last couple weeks here, so that's why not a lot of stats to bring up for these 2 guys. And then there is Brandt Clarke. He's 9% owned. So this is basically all I have for Kings. I would have normally advocated for Victor Arvidsson. He's now on LTIR. So one thing I do want to mention, though, is the Kings are playing much better under their new head coach. Their goaltending has become a little bit better. Riddick went through a little bit of a stretch where he wasn't great, but now Talbot is playing well again. So this new coach bump is affecting the LA Kings, so you might want to go out there and grab some of these guys for season-long ads, as they do some interesting things, especially Trevor Moore's shot volume, to add that at 57% right now. I just dropped him a couple weeks ago, but I am desperate in the Fantasy Puck Creators League, so that's why that happened. But we do have one more team to talk about, and that is the Dallas Stars. And they have a number of players. They're one of the more balanced teams in terms of goal scoring. They get a lot of production from a lot of different players. Thomas Harley has emerged as one of the top defensemen in fantasy. Matt Duchene having a great year. I picked up Mason Marchment a couple weeks ago. He's been kind of cold in terms of scoring and offensive production, still hitting, still shooting, all that kind of stuff. But one guy I did want to bring to your attention, Wyatt Johnston. You're probably already aware of how good he is, but as I've mentioned before, they spread out a lot of their scoring. So if you're in the top 9 in Dallas, there's somebody for you to play with, and there's points available. So 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 7 games, 22 shots. The shot volume really nice there, over 3 shots per game. And if we look at his hub, that's above his average. So he's right around 2.36 shots per game. He's increased that lately, so that's nice to see. He is dual position eligible, which is a little bit more favorable because they do have a couple of those games on those heavier nights. They're not as favorable as a team like Washington this week. But this is a guy that, in a week like this with a 4-game week, I would definitely take a shot on a guy like that. If you're in a deeper league, Logan Stankoven, I don't have much in terms of data for him. He just started playing. I believe it was his first game the other night, so not a lot in terms of player hub data. But in terms of the AHL point numbers he's been putting up, 57 points in 47 games. Him and Maverick Bourque have been tearing up the AHL, and he gets the call up. He's been working on his board battling and his play along the boards to play away from the puck as well. So hopefully he can stick and get a couple games in this week. But if they, the only thing that you have to worry about him is getting healthy scratched, because that happened the other night for me. I picked him up and he didn't play against the Rangers, so that was a little bit difficult to navigate. But if he's in the lineup, I would definitely take a shot on him in a deeper league, as he's probably going to get top 9 exposure, and he's very skilled. So he has the ability to put those points up on the board for you. But there is one guy we have to talk about that I haven't touched on yet, and that is Arturi Lehkonen. So last year it was Nichushkin or Lehkonen back and forth on Power Play 1. Both were extremely productive when they were there. This year you can tell Nichushkin is not in the lineup anymore in the player assistance program. So now that spot is going to Lehkonen, and he's taken it and run with it. He's got 8 points in his last 6 games, 3 of those on the power play. If we look at his hub, it's nothing crazy, but he's only 40% owned, that 92nd percentile power play exposure, especially with all of those Avalanche players that you want exposure to. That is very rare to find a 40% player that's getting you exposure to some of the best in the game, Makar, McKinnon, etc., Rantanen. The shot volume is pretty decent, 2.3 shots per game. 1.3 hits per game is pretty decent as well. So he's covering a little bit of everything, and the goal numbers are decent, 8 goals in 24 games. And a lot of that is baking into the file, the fact that he was injured, coming back off of injury lately. He's been very productive. I'm just going to bring up his game log right now to show you. So as you can see here, 2-goal game, 2-assist game. That's a 4-pointer with a power play point, 5 shots. And then he follows it right up with a goal, an assist, a power play point. And then a couple games with no goals, but basically you're looking at 5 goals and 3 assists over that span. And then there's a lot of nothing back here when he was kind of getting back up to speed. He wasn't on Power Play 1. He was a little bit further down in the lineup. But now he is playing with those top dogs, and he is making it count with a couple of Power Play points here. The shot volume is still good, and now he's getting healthier and starting to hit more. So did want to bring this to your attention. But we're going to shift now over to the goaltending segment and look at some goalies you can pick up this week. Now, before we do anything else, I have to be honest with you guys. I never thought I would see the day when Sergei Bobrovsky is the #1 goalie on the Goalie Hub. You know how I feel about him. I think he's very inconsistent, but for whatever reason, this year is one of those years like the Vezina seasons where he puts it all together and is very consistent and has played well all year long and has given the Florida Panthers a chance, which he didn't really do last year. So they're a much better team regular season-wise this year because of the goaltending they've been getting. But it's not just Bobrovsky. You can also get that from Anthony Stolarz, who's 19% owned. In his last 4 starts, which kind of stretches back at least a month and a half because they don't play him that much. But when they do, he's excellent. 1.48 goals against, 949 save percentage. He's got a 925 on the season, a 2.0 goals against on the season. He's 9.3 above expected. So everything you want to see in terms of a backup, him, Laurent Brossoit, Jonathan Quick, those are the quality backups that you can usually turn to whenever they're getting a start and expect to win and get a really good performance out of them. So this is something that I didn't see coming from Bobrovsky, but Stolarz has been pretty good over the last number of years with Philly and then with Florida. So if you can find him 19% owned, that's somebody that you can jump on. Now, we also have to talk about the Detroit goaltending situation. So we'll start with Alex Lyon. He's way more owned up, 62% owned. I picked him up a couple weeks ago in the Fantasy Puck Creators League, and when I did, he basically dropped like a rock from a 71 down to a 62. Had a bad week, wasn't very good, but he's bounced back. So in his last 3 starts, 3 wins, 1.63 goals against, and a 950 save percentage. So he's bounced right back up to where he was. Still a really good goaltender. He's a 69 on the hub, so he would be in this range, right below Logan Thompson, Pyotr Kochetkov, who's one of the best goaltenders over the past month, UC Saros. So that's elite company for Lyon. But there is also the fact that James Reimer is getting a couple of more starts, and he's made those count. So a guy that, in spurts is reliable in his last 3 appearances, which does also calculate in a relief appearance, but he's got 2 wins, a .67 goals against, 976 save percentage, a shutout, and that relief appearance he was 6 for 6 and had 100 save percentage or whatever. So Reimer, 23% owned, a little bit more available for you. Alex Lyon, less available, but back to being elite. These 2 goaltenders, I guess, are the 2 that they're going to run with. I don't know what's going on with Husso, but for the time being, these 2 are definitely worth the stream if you can. And Detroit, since January 21st, is 7th in the NHL in goals against per game. So that is nice to see them playing defense in front of these 2 goalies, and they're trying to make a push for the playoffs. So this could be that bubble team bonus that I talked about in the preseason. And these 2 guys are available in a lot of different league sizes, so you could go out and grab them. But if you can't go out and get either of those guys, a guy that could potentially try to battle back for the starting job. He used to have the starting job. He was terrible for about 2.5 years. Philip Grubauer, in his last 3 starts, 2 wins, 1.5 goals against, 937 save percentage. And this is another team with excellent defense in front of him, 91st percentile there. And you can see here he was trending down for months. And then right the last couple weeks here, from the 11th onward, bumping back up. He's still only a 44, so he's really far down. But that's because he's not playing a ton. He was injured for a while. He's only 14% owned. And if he has the chance to take over the net for a team that's got really good defense and a team that's battling for a playoff spot, maybe that's a low risk, high reward type of play for Philip Grubauer if he's available on your wire. Another guy that is potentially thinking about taking that starting job is Anton Forsberg. And the reason I mention this is because Jonas Korpisalo is completely unownable. He is last in the NHL in goals saved above expected, minus 15.7. And Ottawa has those 2 back-to-backs this week, so they'll have to use both of their goalies. I would assume you're going to get better starts out of Forsberg. 4 wins in his last 4 starts, 2.19 goals against, and a 918 save percentage. The team defense is not that bad. 73rd percentile is kind of crazy for Ottawa, considering how bad they've been over the course of the season. But since that coaching change, I think things have gotten a little bit better. So Anton Forsberg, only 6% owned, and I would much rather have him over Korpisalo. And there's one other guy, we talked about him a little bit when we were talking about Columbus, and that is Spencer Martin, not Spartan. And Spencer Martin comes over to the Carolina Hurricanes, who have a 97th percentile team defense, top 5, top 3, I would imagine. And he is a little bit below expected, but that's also baking in his time in Columbus. So 892 doesn't look great. 3.30 goals against doesn't look great. But if you look at his last couple starts, since coming over to Carolina, 906 save percentage, 2.0 goals against, 3 wins. So an interesting case where his save percentage isn't crazy good. His goals saved above expected isn't crazy good, but the team exposure is so good that you're going to get wins and you're going to get good goals against. So you get 2 out of 4 good goaltending categories out of Spencer Martin. They, I think, are still running with Kochetkov as their quote-unquote number 1. Martin getting an occasional start, and once Freddie Anderson comes back, he will probably be sent down or not used as much. And Antti Ranta is currently out. I don't know what his timetable is. They have a ton of goalies there, but if they go with Spencer Martin, he is ownable at the very least for a stream here and there. Only 5% owned. Of the 2, I would rather have Forsberg, who has a better chance of taking over the net and a lot less congestion in the crease, but Spencer Martin on a spot start is a decent option as well. But that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you got something good out of it. If you did, let me know in the comments section below. I will probably be doing something on the upcoming playoff push and the different weeks for different playoffs and go through the schedule a little bit, but that'll be coming up at a later date. Hopefully this was enough to get you through week 20. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.